Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited we're spending this time here today. Our first guest, Dr. John McGrail, is here today to talk to us about his new book, The Synthesis Effect. So welcome to the show, Dr. John.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you so much. Nice to be with you.
Oh, I am so excited we're spending this time here today. I mean, your book is, man, it was pretty powerful. I absolutely loved it.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you to say.
Oh, my goodness. Well, and so I have to ask, for those that are new to your work, and, I mean, gosh, you're all about transformation. How did you get on this path?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, but the short version is that I've always been really fascinated by the mind-body connection in human behavior. It's just sort of a hobby, and I can't explain it any other way, and as well as spirituality and theology. And I've had the pleasure and the good fortune to have really interesting professional careers. I've had several. I was a professional pilot for many years, and then I got into mass communications, TV and film, and then corporate training. And through all of those positions, the one part that always was my favorite was the fact that I always ended up being a teacher and a mentor and a coach in some way or another. And what happened was I reached a crossroad in my professional life where the company that I was an executive VP for essentially went under with the dot-com crash because our company got bought by a dot-com that was in the middle of going out of business. And when it happened, I was suddenly unemployed and kind of looking at my life and saying, okay, what is it that you want to do? And I just took an inventory of all the things I had ever done and realized that the part of all those jobs in the different industries was teaching and coaching and mentoring. And I was also in a really big spiritual growth mode myself. And so it all sort of came together at that point. And I said, okay, I know what I want to do. Now, how am I going to do it? And that's really how I ended up where I am today. I went back to school for certification in hypnotherapy because it was only a year as opposed to 4 or 5 or 6 to get a PhD in psychology, or 10 actually when you think of all of it. I thought of divinity school, all these different things, but hypnotherapy I had used myself and it had been very powerful for me, and it was a way to go back in a year, sort of reinvent myself. And that's how it all started 15 years ago, and I've never looked back. And I like to say I've never worked a day since.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, you're featured everywhere in Self Magazine, Time, U.S. News. I mean, Redbook, people love your messaging and your information, and not only that, but how you're helping people to transform lives. So this kind of gets me to my next question. So why the synthesis effect? How did you come up with this?
Well, interestingly, a part of it was by accident. Over the years, when I started my practice of clinical hypnotherapy, I pretty much used the doctrines and the methods that I was taught in school because you have to start somewhere. But over the years, I started gradually introducing more and more techniques that I had learned in other places, from Native American philosophy and some bits from Australian Aboriginal philosophy and spirituality. And when I went to do my PhD, and it came time to pick a topic for my, quote, original research, I was sort of stymied. I said, what do I have to offer human behavior? We've been behaving the way we've been behaving for thousands of years, and what am I going to, what new original thing do I have? And I was really stumped. And then it dawned on me that I had about 1,000 case files in front of me from my first 8 years in practice or so. And I said, you know what? I know what I can do. I can look at all these files and find out what the differences are between the people who I've worked with that did really, really well and the people who did okay and those few individuals who didn't. And fortunately, there are only a few of them because otherwise I wouldn't be in business. And so I said, let me see if I can find some common denominators. And that's really what the birth of synthesis was about, because I did. I researched my case files and really divided the population into 3 segments, and I found that there were common denominators, and that was the birth of synthesis.
Well, I think a lot of times when people look at this, they're kind of going, gosh, that sounds pretty scientific, but your book is really written for just anyone to pick up and understand and start to use.
Yes, well, it was scientific in that when you do research, you have to use scientific methodology to test your hypothesis. And so in that regard it is. But what I do is help everyday people. So when it came time to write the book, I wanted it to be as casual and as conversational and as easy to read as possible, because some of the concepts can be quite hard to grasp. And I think if I've been successful in any way, it's helping people understand what could be very complicated in a very simple, informative, conversational way. And there's plenty of anecdotes and stories from real people like you and me, because I'm just I don't consider myself a guru or anything. I'm just a regular guy. I had my own issues and got through them, and I share some of my story. And so when I wrote the book, I wanted it to be casual. I wanted it to be like my readers were having a session with me, because that's how I do my sessions. It's very casual. It's very informal. And I found a long time ago that you get much better results that way. So that's why the book is written the way it was.
It's very well written. I loved it. I thought you did a fabulous job explaining what could be very complex, processes, to kind of just, whittle it down so people can really understand it and really get a great understanding of that. Now, gosh, in today's society, I feel like we're really more disconnected now than ever. How is, and I know a lot of people, a lot of people probably feel that way as well. How is science disproving our disconnection and really that we're more connected than people think?
Well, I don't know that they are really proving that we're more connected than people think. I think part of the problems with modern society, and I'm not seeing the tidal wave turn the other way yet, is that we are so, and I use that word disconnected, our energies are so imbalanced. We are all about, in modern Western culture, we are all about material wealth and gain, and we focus on what's not good, lack, insufficiency, negativity, fear. And we have really lost our ability to use or tap into what I believe is the most powerful part of our being, which is our spirit. And because of that, because we're so emotionally imbalanced, I think that's why you have such incredible epidemic levels of stress and anxiety and anger and obesity and addiction. Science is proving that we are spiritual beings. There's no question about that. The evidence is irrefutable, but I'm not sure society has really embraced it yet, not as a society. Individuals, and that's why I do what I do and you do what you do. We reach individuals or small groups at a time, and hopefully they then pass on the word, so to speak. So the science is there, but I'm not sure society has really embraced it yet. It's still considered new age or woo-woo. And you mention the word meditation to people, and they kind of look at you like, oh, I'm not going to do that. They're afraid of it, many people. And it's so endemic to our basic being, and it's been used since the dawn of civilization, and it's an incredibly powerful tool. And yet people are afraid of it, or they don't have time for it, but they have time for their lattes at Starbucks, So the science is there, but, we still have to get the word out. And that's part of why I wrote this book, is to help people start shifting their energies. Because once you balance your physical, emotional, and spiritual energy, you become a very happy camper. Life becomes a lot of fun.
Well, I know that's your number one rule, is life is supposed to be fun.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty good rule to have, I think, and I think if we had more people living by that rule, gosh, what a great place this would be,
Right. And of course, it doesn't mean that life is an endless series of hedonistic parties and experiences. It means that when you get up in the morning, you look forward to the day. You love what you do for a living, hopefully. You love the people that you're relating to. You love the way you're making the choices of your life, how you think, what you say, how you speak, and how you behave. And when that happens, and it's doable by anybody that wants to put in a little bit of effort, when you get to that place, it's really, really amazing how enjoyable life is. And that's what I mean by a fun life. You can learn to live virtually free of suffering. It's never perfect, but it's amazing how things that used to be earth-shattering to you suddenly really have no importance whatsoever, because you put them in appropriate perspective once you're balanced.
Getting that balance is why people come to you. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about, your process and how hypnosis plays a part in that?
Sure. Well, again, hypnosis, like meditation, is simply a state of consciousness. And it's a natural state of consciousness, whether we know it or not. We all do it every day, naturally. Whenever we watch a good film and we get sucked into the film and we're feeling emotions, or we're reading a good book and we're up way past our bedtime, but we can't wait to see what's going to happen to Harry Potter, or even just daydreaming, zoning out on the freeway and missing your exit or getting someplace and not remembering how you got there. Those are all naturally hypnotic moments. So the human mind enters hypnosis several times every day. Hypnotherapy is simply establishing that state of consciousness, hypnosis, which creates a very open and receptive state of mind. The mind becomes very open to new ideas, to unlearning the patterns, the habits, the behaviors that aren't working, and then relearning, reprogramming, if you don't mind me using that word, our subconscious mind for the new habits, patterns, and behaviors we want. And that's all it is. It's a tool. It's just a very focused, calm, relaxed state of mind. But it has a huge effect on changing or getting over or through our natural resistance to change. That's the thing. We are all naturally resistant to change. Even though we know the change would be good for us and it's something we want, the way the mind has developed in human beings, we will cling to the familiar, even when it's painful, with tenacity. Hypnosis simply allows us to open the door, if you will, to new ideas, to new patterns, to new behaviors. And with appropriate reinforcement, and meditation is an incredibly appropriate reinforcement, they become as automatic as the old painful ones were, and we're off to the races. So that's really what hypnosis does. It's just a great tool.
I think a lot of times people may have had a bad connotation when it comes to hypnosis. And I think the tables are kind of turning with that a little bit, because they've been maybe at an event or someplace where, someone who does hypnosis will have them quack like chickens or feel like they're doing things that are against their nature, which is when they go through the hypnosis process, that's not the case, correct?
Absolutely. And it's the people in the audience who see the people on stage who think that they've been taken over, because who in their right mind would do that? But what people in the audience forget is that the first thing a stage hypnotist says is, hey, who wants to come up and play with me? Who wants to have some fun today? And, of course, the people who raise their hands are going to, of that population, there will be 10 or 12 that have the ability of going into very deep hypnosis very quickly. And the stage hypnotist can find those people with a few very simple tests. And then you have the 10 or 12 people up there who want to be in the show. They want to do the zany things because they've volunteered, and they happily do them in hypnosis, because you cannot make anybody do something they wouldn't normally want to do. And I always say to people, if they call me, first of all, if I could make you do what I want you to do, I would be the most benevolent ruler of the planet that ever existed. Unfortunately, I can't do that. I can only help you do what you want to do. And very often I'll get calls from potential clients who call and say, well, my husband, my wife, my boyfriend, girlfriend, or mother, dad wants me to and thinks I'll be better off if I do. And I say, well, do you want to do that? Do you want to make that change in your life? And if they say, well, not really, I say, well, I can't help you. So yes, it is simply a state of consciousness that allows us to create the emotional, behavioral, and even physical changes that we want to create, That is the key. But it is a very powerful tool. It really helps a lot.
Well, I've had hypnosis done, and I know that during that process, it really helps make those shifts not be such a major thing,
Yes.
Whether it's waking up, on being on time, or, watching what you eat, or whatever the case is, not being afraid of heights, those kind of things. What is the number one reason people come to you?
Well, it's interesting, Marianne. Today, the number one reason people come to me would be for excessive stress and anxiety. Probably 85 to 90% of my new clients over the last several years are suffering from stress and anxiety. 10 years ago, that was not the case. And I think that's just another indication of our society being in such a state. People are wigged out. I mean, we're bombarded with negativity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Turn on any media outlet or look at a newspaper, and you don't very often hear the good stuff. They don't tell us that, hey, folks, I know that you're scared, and we're going to scare you. That's what we get paid to do. But remember this one salient fact. Most of the people on the planet, and most of the planet right now are perfectly fine. So remember that as we now give you the bad news. But because we're so bombarded with it and because we're so imbalanced from a physical, emotional, and spiritual sense, we suffer terribly. So yeah, anxiety and stress. Probably 90% of my new clients. And the good news is creating that balance or recreating it is not particularly difficult, and we can get rid of that pretty quickly.
You know, it's interesting because like when I've talked to hypnotherapists before, they've said like their number one thing that they're dealing with, and it's like a few years ago, was like fears and limiting beliefs and those kind of things. But it's interesting just how that shift has happened, especially in the climate that we have with the world today. You know, and I think, you know, having people like you is just so helpful for people to be able to make the shift that they want to make and not get so sucked into everything that's going around them that really they're feeling is negative.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and I still do deal with those issues, you know, fears and limiting beliefs and whatnot, but absolutely. And I also think that, you know, given practitioners attract the energy that they're supposed to attract. In other words, you know, there are probably hypnotherapists that get more people who want to quit smoking or lose weight, or that they have a fear. And I do deal with all of that. But for whatever reason, I've somehow become somewhat of a specialist in treating stress and anxiety. And those folks, you know, I believe the people you're supposed to work with are the people that find you. And I've got clients as young as 8, little kids, that are stressed and anxious, and that's insane. I think, you know, it's heartbreaking to see an 8-year-old that you know can't sleep at night or is having, you know, night terrors and for no good reason.
Wow, that is way too young. I think at 8 years old, I don't think I was thinking about anything. I was just playing. You know?
Exactly, and you know, I probably this year alone, it's August, I've probably seen, you know, 6 kids in that age group. All of them with anxiety.
Oh, thank goodness we have people like you. And I understand for those who are not within the LA area that you actually do distant appointments, which is fabulous because anyone can connect with you.
Yes, remote sessions are definitely not only doable but very effective. And with, you know, the miracle of technology, it's also a curse in some ways because it propagates all the negativity. But I have clients literally all over the world. With Skype and Zoom and some of the other visual media, we're basically together. So I have lots of remote clients, and I'm happy to take them. There are a few issues sometimes that I don't think are well treated remotely, and I'll tell someone that if I don't think it. But most of the stuff I do, and it works really, really well remotely.
Well, it's not like people can't hop on a plane and get to LA.
Well, I do have folks that fly in, believe it or not.
I don't doubt that. I mean, my goodness, you're so well educated on this topic and you have such a handle on it, more so than I think I've ever seen. I can bet that people are, you know, flying out there to have appointments with you. Yeah,
and a lot of times they'll come out and we'll do a few sessions here. If they can, you know, they'll come out for, I just had a young lady from Boston who came out for a week and a half, and we were able to do a sort of a compressed schedule, gave her several sessions, and then after that, we can work remotely. She was one of those cases that I said, you know, there's no way I can do this remotely. We have to have some in-person time first. So there are a lot of ways of making it happen. I think the thing that I would emphasize is that to anybody that hears this is that if you have an issue, it is fixable. If you get the right help, and, you know, you can get the right help, and whether it's me or someone else, I'm always happy to also advise people if they call me and I don't think I'm the right fit. I can often refer them to someone who I think would be a better fit. But I believe that we all not only deserve to live that number one rule, life is supposed to be fun, but we have a responsibility to ourselves to make the very most out of this incredibly precious gift. And so if you have something, don't live that way. You know, a lot of people think, well, this is as good as it gets. It's not. You can fix it. Everybody's got whatever they need to create the changes that they want to create. But most of us do need a little assistance. And that's another myth, is that people think they're supposed to be able to do it themselves, which is just insane, because We all need help. You know, how many people pull their own teeth or operate on their own body? Nobody. And yet if we have an emotional issue or a mental health issue, oh my God, you're supposed to suck it up and fix it all by yourself. There's this stigma attached to that. And that's another one of my sort of crusades, if you will, is to help make that stigma go away so that the folks out there that want help get it and start learning how to live that rule number one.
Well, and I would think that just self-value plays a huge part in all of this, you know, how people view and feel about themselves.
Yeah, a lot of people, unfortunately, don't believe they're worthy. They don't deserve to have the happiness, the relationships, the career, or whatever it is that's lacking in their lives. And they truly believe that. And, you know, what I try to help my clients understand right away in our first session, we talk about the nature of belief. Beliefs are nothing more than thoughts that we have thought over and over and over again. So many times they do become automatic and they become unquestioned. But they are just thoughts. And a lot of this process is learning how to make different choices when those thoughts come up, because you can't get rid of them completely. But you're right. You're so very right. So many people don't think they deserve to have a happy life. And why not? Why doesn't everybody deserve to have a happy life? We're all exactly equal, you know, when we come into this lifetime.
Well, yeah, I know in your book, and I've got more questions than we have time for, so I'm trying to pick and choose here.
Okay. Well, I'll come back anytime you want. I really enjoy talking with you.
Oh, well, I enjoyed talking with you too, and so I want you to touch on this one piece because I found it very interesting. Now, in your book, you talk about the law of attraction and the indigenous people. So, what do they have to do with one another?
Well, the law of attraction is a universal law. You know, it's been understood at some level or another since the dawn of time. That which is like unto itself is attracted, which basically means, you know, the energy flows along lines of attraction. If anybody's listening to this show, pick up a pen or a pencil, hold it in the air and let it go. Which way does it go? It doesn't go up. It goes down. It's attracted to the earth. Or like I like to say, you know, pigeons don't hang out with crows. Birds of a feather flock together. If you look in the Bible, the law of attraction is mentioned something like 226 times. So it is a universal law of nature that energy flows along lines of attraction. And essentially what that means for us is that the energy we put out is going to have a huge effect on the energy we attract back. And that's really what life is about. It's an exchange of energies. We take energies in a variety of forms. We hear, touch, taste, smell, see. We eat food, we breathe in air, energy goes out. We move, we think, we behave, we pee, we poop. So energy in, energy out. And the law of attraction basically says you're going to attract the energy that you put out, particularly in the way you think and the way you believe. The indigenous peoples of the world, the quote-unquote primitive folks, knew this intuitively. They just knew that the energy, the way they lived their lives, had an incredible effect on what they manifested. We think that we have to see something in order to believe it. The indigenous peoples of the world believe it in order to see it. And the ironic thing is that science, which has to see in order to believe, is now proving through incredible experiments, if you look this stuff up, it just blows your mind, that the native peoples, the indigenous peoples, the primitive peoples, the way they think, they believe in order to see because they know they're going to attract it back. That's the way the world really works. And so we're slowly, through our scientific regimens, coming back to the way all human beings thought centuries ago, when they didn't even know one another existed. All these different indigenous tribes were separated by vast geographies. They didn't know one another existed. And if you scrape away the semantics of their rituals and whatnot and look at their core philosophies, they're almost all identical. So they just simply knew this. Now we have, because we are who we are, we're now proving what they knew. But once we start working with the law of attraction, which is a big part of the synthesis process, it is amazing how we begin to manifest. Not what we thought we were stuck with, but what we want. And that's what it's all about.
Well, and I think that that's such a powerful place for people to come from and for them to understand how this works together, because a lot of times it seems like it'd be this mysterious thing that's out there, and they don't really realize how how really law of attraction's been around for eons, and it's not, I mean, indigenous people have been using it. It's not that hard to learn and to put into practice.
No, it really isn't. It does take a little practice. It takes diligence because we tend to be hardwired to go the other way. But, a really simple example of this, and I'm sure everybody out there can identify with this. Let's say you decide that you want a new car. Doesn't matter what the car is. Say, okay, you know what? I think a Mini Cooper would be a really good car to own. And you really start focusing on Mini Coopers. You've got a lot of energy. You go to the websites and you look them up, and the Mini will let you build your own Mini on the computer, and so you're going through all of this, and all of a sudden you start seeing Mini Coopers all over the place. They appear in traffic wherever you are. That is a very simplified example of the law of attraction. You're focusing on something and suddenly it appears. That's exactly what happens. That works in every area of your life. So you can focus on happiness, you can focus on abundance, you can focus on success, or their opposites, and you will attract more of that. And that's really what it is. It takes a little practice, but with diligence and practice, you can get so good at it. It's amazing.
Mm. So what are some final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, first of all, let me just take a moment to thank you again for your kindness and generosity. I love speaking with you, and if you ever want me back, I'd be happy to do it. But the thought that I always leave everybody, or like to leave everybody with, is that number one, you deserve to have the life you want. Number two, I promise you, you may not feel this way, but you have everything you need inside of you to create that life. Three, you're probably going to need a little assistance to tap into those energies, those resources, as I call them. But if you get the right help, it's doable, and it can happen faster than you might imagine. That is what the whole thing is. That's what I have dedicated, the last 25 years of my life to creating for myself, but now passing it on to others. So you can do it. You have it in you. You're going to probably need a little help. Go get it and live beautifully. Rule number one. Life is supposed to be fun.
Well, Dr. John, we will most definitely have you back on the show again. I mean, this has been way too much fun. And just not only that, but you've got such great information, and the journey that you're taking to help people transform and just live better lives is one that I definitely am applauding. So thank you for being with us here today and sharing your message.
Well, thank you again so much for having me, because it weren't for people like you, I couldn't get that message out. And you're doing amazing work yourself. So I applaud you for the work you do. And again, my extreme thanks for your kindness in having me on.
Oh, well, gosh, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. So where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Well, they can go to either of my websites, drjohnmcgrail.com, just my name, drjohnmcgrail.com, or my hypnotherapy-focused website, Hypnotherapy Los Angeles, all one long word.com. And you can sign up for my newsletters. My phone number is all over all the sites. My email address is there. So if anybody wants to contact me, they can call, they can email me, they can text. Well, they can't text me because I don't give my cell phone out until I'm reached. Once someone reaches out, they can have my cell phone number. And if anybody does have questions, thanks for this opportunity. I answer all requests personally. I don't have my staff or my people take care of those. You may get an operator because my office line, I just don't have time to answer it, so I have a service. But I get the message, and if someone reaches out, regardless of where they are around the country or around the world, they will get a personal response from me in whatever form they wish. And it's always complimentary. It's absolutely free.
Well, that is definitely a gift. And also, you want to make sure to pick up Dr. John McGrail's book, The Synthesis Effect, Your Direct Path to Personal Power and Transformation, available on Amazon and on barnesandnoble.com. We are going to pause here for a quick break, and we will be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Ben Wexler is a gifted leadership development and strategy consultant for professionals who want to transform their organizations and careers. Through a uniquely personalized set of processes, participants discover their unique knowledge, how to leverage that knowledge and experience, and then put it all together with a global strategy. You're more valuable, your organization is more valuable, and the change is viral. Contact Ben at 630-881-1074. 630-881-1074.
This is Jennifer McGill. My highly anticipated new album, Unbreakable, is now available at jennifermcgill.com. Everything from power ballads to high-energy jam-out-in-your-car songs. I used my highest joys and deepest pains to create empowering songs of love, strength, healing, and restoration so that you can be unbreakable too. Get your copy of Unbreakable today from jennifermcgill.com. Because who doesn't want to be unbreakable?
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. Our next guest is here today to talk to us about healing interpersonal wounds. Dr. Janis Abrahms Springs is a board-certified clinical psychologist and acclaimed expert on issues of trust, intimacy, and forgiveness. So let's welcome to the show Dr. Janis.
Thank you. I'm happy to be talking with you.
Oh, what a joy it is to have you here. You know, and I first connected with you because I actually saw your workshop at Omega.
Yes. So the Omega workshop was in August, and I'm doing another one at Kripalu in December. And anyway, I can mention my website. It's Janis Abrahms Spring is my name, and the website is www.janisaspring.com. And on my website is a full listing of where I'm giving talks, the Ackerman Institute for the Family in New York, and Kripalu are the next couple that are coming up.
Mm-hmm. So the one that you had at Omega is healing interpersonal wounds, and I found that to be quite fascinating. What inspired this topic? I'm known for my work in infidelity and helping couples heal and rebuild trust and intimacy after an affair. But then after I wrote my After the Affair book, I went on to write a book that refers to any interpersonal wound that takes place between any two people held together by a violation. And that's called How Can I Forgive You? The Courage to Forgive, the Freedom Not to. So it's not a pro-forgiveness book. It is not the same old message that we hear over and over again that basically we hear that forgiveness is good for us and good people forgive. We hear this over and over again. The reality is that people don't like it. They don't like the message. It doesn't work for them. It doesn't hold up to be true in their lives. They don't believe that forgiveness is good for them. And they don't believe that
other people deserve their forgiveness. So they're left hating and hurting with no place to go. And so what I did is it occurred to me that there was something missing in the model, something between, living in a grudge state, hating and hurting, and kind of perhaps an all too fluffy response of forgiving somebody who isn't sorry and doesn't take responsibility for how they've hurt you and doesn't really care about their impact on you. And that forgiveness just feels much too generous. So I went on to develop this healthy alternative to forgiveness, which is called acceptance. And in the How Can I Forgive You book, I spell out, for example, 10 steps you can take to heal yourself and to overcome your obsessive preoccupation with the injury without forgiving the offender who isn't sorry. It's not forgiveness. It's a different process. It's for yourself. It's something you do by yourself and for yourself, called acceptance. The forgiveness, what I call genuine forgiveness, according to me, is a transaction. It requires the helping hand of the offender. If that person is deceased, not available geographically, not available psychologically, not sorry, there is no forgiveness. It must be earned. And it requires, it's this intimate dance between these two people held together by the violation. It could be a mother and a father, or two sisters, or, a father and a son, or friends or colleagues. And so there are certain things that the hurt party can do to foster the process, and there are certain things that the offender can do to earn the forgiveness. So these workshops that are in Omega and at Kripalu are 8 hours each. They're very intensive, done in a group where everybody is there with wounds.
Well, and so I can understand where it'd be kind of difficult for somebody who has maybe suffered a huge tragedy to get to that place of forgiveness. And so coming into this place of acceptance just seems like a simpler leap for most people.
Well, it's not, people don't resist it. It's not as if it's hard to move towards acceptance. It's just, first of all, understanding the idea that it goes against familiar code, which says that we have to forgive in order to get healthy. And so that kind of makes people stumble, because if they have to forgive but they can't forgive, they don't know where to go. And so by having an alternative that says, of course you don't want to forgive, of course you can't forgive, of course forgiveness makes no sense to you, but here is something else that you can do to heal yourself without forgiving. People don't resist that idea. They just have to have it presented to them.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier because if someone's really injured somebody, forgiveness does seem like that's a really hard place to get to sometimes.
Now I want to say that for many people, forgiveness is not an option. They are required, according to their religion, to forgive, and that they are required to forgive in order to earn eternal life. And so I want to say for these people, I respect their religion and their ideas about this process, and my model will not speak to them.
Yeah, okay. They've already have something in place that will work for their belief system.
Well, I don't think it works for them, because I've actually had many Christian counselors tell me how helpful my model was, but I think it's what they're taught. And I don't mean to be offensive. I just want to say that for many people, it is mandated that you must forgive, and they feel that they believe they will not be good human beings and will not earn eternal life if they don't. But for many people, they, just kind of a kiss and make up, or something that's a unilateral response to an injury, where they offer forgiveness to somebody who's done nothing to hear their pain or to make good just makes them want to gag. And they have no place to go because there's either forgiving or not forgiving.
Yeah. Well, and so have you ever come across anyone that gets to a place where even acceptance is a really hard place for them to move into?
No, because it depends on what acceptance means. I think what you're saying, Marianne, is for a lot of people, the meaning of acceptance is something that they struggle with. What is acceptance? It's going to mean something to someone. The word acceptance, what does it mean? It means so many different things to different people. But if it means, for example, people don't even think about meaning. What does it mean to accept? For many people, they'll say, well, you just want me to be okay with this, and I'm not going to be okay with this. You want me to say that what you did wasn't so bad, and I'm not going to say that, because what you did was very, very bad. And so when they hear just accept, often it's meaningless. They don't know how to accept. They don't know what it means. Frankly, the meaning it has for them is offensive. And it diminishes the reality of their experience.
Okay, so the healing process that you teach, what do you mean by acceptance for that?
Well, acceptance is a process, and there are 10 steps in my How Can I Forgive You book that spell out what does it mean to accept. And it's really meant for the self. So, for example, step 1 would be that you honor all that you feel. You have to know all that you feel. Not that you change the feelings. Not that you minimize the feelings. But a lot of people know their anger, for example, but they don't know their sadness. The relationship has failed, or they have been hurt terribly by somebody who matters to them. They need to know their sadness as well as the anger. For other people, they know their sadness, but they don't know their anger. That's very dangerous when you don't know your anger. Anger can be a very healthy emotion when somebody has violated you so terribly. And so, we start off with, let's begin to try to understand and honor all that you feel. So that would be a step.
Yeah.
Another step would be, you make a decision what kind of relationship you want with this person. That doesn't mean forgiveness. People confuse it with forgiveness. But let's say your husband had an affair and you get divorced and he goes on, he's with this other person, and you don't feel any forgiveness for him. But you make a decision that for the sake of your children, you're going to get along with this person because you're not going to put them in the middle. You're not going to put them between two warring parents. You're not going to ask them to take sides. You're not going to squeeze them, because we know that kids suffer when they're caught between warring parents. And so you are pleasant towards your partner when you are with your kids and in his presence, for example, for the sake of your children. It doesn't mean you forgive him. It doesn't mean that you are saying that what he did wasn't so bad. You're just caring for your kids. So another step would be learning to overcome your obsessive preoccupation with the injury. And people will say, yeah, great, I'm happy to learn not to obsess about this. How many times a day does this pop into my head? How much time do I waste, thinking about how this person has hurt me? It doesn't hurt them. They're not suffering. It doesn't improve my situation in any way. I just waste an incredible amount of time, and I'm often not even aware. I'm driving in the car. 20 minutes has gone by. I've just lost 20 minutes of my life, just grinding gears, just thinking of hateful thoughts towards this person. It's not healthy. So that would be another step, and I've reviewed 10 different strategies from different therapy models on how to contain, overcome obsessive preoccupation. You do this for yourself. It's not forgiveness. It's part of healing the self, the acceptance process. Another step would be that you have to acknowledge the good and the bad. It doesn't mean you have to forgive them. It doesn't mean you need to have a relationship. But see them fairly. So maybe they've had an affair, but maybe there are very good things too. Maybe they paid for the kids' education and never asked for a penny. Maybe they helped you with your mother or your father when they were sick and provided, entry into a nursing home or helped in some other way. So it doesn't mean, again, that you're going to forgive them, but it asks to see them fairly, weighing the good against the bad, seeing both sides. So these would be some of the steps for healing the self without forgiving the offender who hasn't made, meaningful repairs.
Well, it's easy to see why your books are so popular and why these steps are outlined the way that they are, because it makes it really easy for somebody to get to a place where they're like, well, I can do this, I can get to the point where I can, see them fairly. Maybe they did something horrible and heinous, but there are times that they were actually, a good parent or a good partner or whatever the case may be.
Right. So or maybe they treated me terribly the same way that they were treated by their parents. Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting perspective, too, that they went on to imitate the behavior of another generation, the transgenerational pattern. And it's sad. That's sad.
It seems like a lot of that happens, with parents that they know the one way that they were brought up, and so they in turn teach that to the children, and it kind of mirrors in all kind of relationships in their life.
Right. Well, certainly that's true of infidelity. If one of your parents had an affair, you're much more likely to. Of course it goes the other way too. If one of your parents had an affair and you had to live through that nightmare, you may be less anxious to, expose your kids to the same nightmare.
Yeah, I know people who have had alcoholic parents, and they won't drink at all because they just see the damage that's done to families and, to their family, so it makes sense with that.
Right, but then there's a genetic transmission where they may be more vulnerable to alcoholism, and so they end up inflicting the same wounds onto their kids that were inflicted onto them.
Yeah,
alcohol can really, really destroy people's lives and relationships.
Mm-hmm. So what if there's a lot of shame surrounding the injury that the person has experienced? And they're like, gosh, this is just such a horrible, shameful thing. I can't even verbalize it. Can't even talk. How do you deal with people when they're having a difficult time through those kind of situations?
Well, is the shame experienced by the victim or by the offender?
By the victim.
By the victim. So somebody has treated them terribly and they feel ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody has raped them, they feel ashamed.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of situation?
Yeah, because I know that you had some talking points in regards to that on your workshop with Omega, and I was just curious to see how shame played a part. In fact, we could probably talk about both sides, probably the perpetrator and the victim, and how that plays a part. And is there a way to resolve that in a healthy manner?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of literature that shows that shame is actually not a very helpful emotion. Mm-hmm. When we experience shame, we have a sense of a bad me, of being no good. And often when we feel so bad about ourselves, we are not inspired to go on and do better and be better. So an alcoholic who experiences a lot of shame is less likely to get sober and to go on to make good. We think of shame as maybe it's going to teach us some lessons, but the idea is if you can be appropriately critical of those aspects of yourself or those behaviors where you've done wrong or you've treated somebody badly, it's important to be critical. We have to be critical. We have to look honestly at ourselves and be critical of those behaviors where we've wronged others in ways that they didn't deserve. But we, at the same time, have to hold on to all that's good and decent about ourselves. And the alcoholic who is shame-prone, shame-based, is less likely to become sober and remain sober and go on and do good and be good. So, the guilt is, when we are appropriately critical of our behavior. The shame is this sense of a bad me, just a rotten me. And that doesn't help anybody. And it's not usually fair for people to label themselves that way. And it certainly doesn't inspire them.
Well, and I'm sure you see people that come to you either in your workshops or as patients that will that have lots of different issues that they are dealing with. How often do you see the shame component encompassed in what they're dealing?
Well, shame comes up in both partners. The shame, when your partner's had an affair, often you experience not only shame, shame is kind of an abstract concept, shame, but, a bad me. And people, when your partner has been unfaithful, this is one of the beauties of these group therapy sessions like Omega or the Kripalu, because when shame is aired publicly, and when you can see it happening in other people, you have a better perspective on it. Shame is very dark, and we don't tend to talk about our shame. Shame gets buried, and it gets buried in a very dark and deep place and not aired, and it festers. But the shame lifts, when you can begin to talk about it and feel embraced by other people and get better perspectives and have a more holistic view of who you are and experience the friendship of other people and the warmth, and you don't feel so alone. And you look at all these people, and, I've given many of these courses, and I think, we've got a few people here in this course. Let me tell you, there isn't a person at this facility who isn't struggling with forgiveness issues, who hasn't been hurt terribly by somebody, who hasn't experienced being clobbered emotionally and by somebody and has that pocket of shame somewhere. And it is very freeing, very stabilizing, very supportive to hear other people's stories. And it helps you to feel like a normal human being, and to, lift some of the darkness.
Yeah, because it seems like a lot of secrets are also kind of revolve around shameful, what people feel is like a shameful event or a shameful, action. And so in doing that, there's got to be a lot of freedom, like how you're saying, being able to voice that out in a group, and then you don't feel like you're so alone, too.
Absolutely. This is so true in affairs. Your partner has an affair, and your partner, you lose your sense of self, and you begin to think of yourself often as not attractive, not good enough, not smart, not fun, and you become your own critic. And people experience, one of the things that I think one of the reasons why After the Affair has been successful is because it was the first book to identify an affair, to label it not as a loss of partner, not as a loss of fidelity, but as a loss of self. that people feel demolished and they lose their way of knowing their self, their familiar self. So you may have known yourself as being zesty and attractive and bright and fun. And then you discover your partner has been unfaithful and you feel, like dead in the world, and very critical of yourself. And you have trouble getting out of bed. Forget being zesty and bright and fun and attractive and interesting. You have trouble moving your body through the day. And so the people experience so much loss, not just the loss of fidelity and the loss of trust, but the basic loss of self. Now, it will come back. It will come back. But they have to re-engage with life. And you don't feel like re-engaging with life. You don't feel you have much to offer. You don't want to set yourself up for rejection again. And you have lost your confidence. And you're also obsessed. You've lost your mind. You're obsessed with the details of your partner's affair. And it's not interesting, but you find yourself checking what he's doing or she's doing and reviewing history, and it's not fun, and it takes a lot of time, and it's crippling.
It's like going down the rabbit hole in some ways, and not in a positive way.
Yeah, right.
Because it's just that focus on something that's not going to move you forward in life, but it's just kind of dragging you down.
Right.
And I can understand what you're talking about. I mean, I had a boyfriend for many years, and when we broke up, I felt completely isolated because I had lost all of my friends because they were, a lot of them were good friends with him before the breakup, and he was the guy with all the toys. I mean, he had the fifth wheel and boats and all that kind of thing. And so it was really interesting reclaiming my identity afterwards. Because it was like, gosh, where'd everyone go?
Right.
So I'm sure that you meet people on many levels, either through relationships or breakups, but I can see why your book and your messaging and your workshops help so many people, because they can come to you whether they've had a breakup or divorce or infidelity or alcoholic parents. I mean, you name it. And you can help them work through all of that.
Yeah, I mean, people need to hear themselves. We're constantly talking to ourselves. We are meaning-making as human beings. We don't know we're talking to ourselves, but we are all day long. Often in ways that we wouldn't dream of talking to a best friend. We're telling ourselves such negative things. That's what I trained with Aaron Beck, who is the founder of cognitive therapy, and he would say that depression is a negative triad, a negative view of yourself, being so critical of yourself, a negative view of your life, and a negative view of the future. And that, you add up all of that, it could sink anyone. And we have these ruminations, this constant internal dialogue where we're negative about ourselves and our life and our future. And it's affecting us emotionally and how we behave. And often when our partner has an affair, interestingly, when somebody has wronged us, we inhale that injury and we begin to feel bad about ourselves. This person has treated us badly, and we often don't just feel anger. We get depressed, and we begin to think badly about ourselves because this person has treated us so badly. That's very dangerous.
Yeah, that would be a dangerous hole to go down.
And normal, and entirely normal. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the workshops are great because you really provide a safe place for people to express that they are feeling this way or going through these kind of situations, and they can start working through them.
Well, people are very respectful to each other. And everybody, I always say it's the heroes who come to the course. It's the people who don't show up who really need the therapy. Very interestingly, often It's the partners that don't come. The other ones come. The ones who are coming for help. I always say in my practice, I've been in private practice for 40 years. I'm not worried about the people who are coming in for the therapy. It's the people who don't come in for therapy who have the biggest problems.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're the
and
ones
often
that
aren't taking a fair share of responsibility for how they've hurt other people.
Well, when that happens, and because we've got a few more minutes, I do want to kind of expand on this discussion a little bit. When that happens, when you're not getting the partner coming in to work, to do any of the work on the relationship, what are some of the things that you do? You just work with the individual that's showing up and getting them to the best place that they can be?
Yes. Well, that's the work of acceptance, where you don't need the other person. If they're not willing or able to participate in taking responsibility for their share and making you feel loved and cherished and respected and safe, then yes, you have an obligation to yourself to get better and to engage with life. And so often we'll begin, just hearing negative thoughts about the self and the life and the future, the core of the depression, and to begin to appreciate the impact of those ideas, and then beginning to challenge those ideas, both in the way you talk to yourself and in the way you engage in life. And so, often that's why the support of the group is often you end up feeling normal and cared for, and like a person who's worth being cared for. And that may not be the way you're feeling about yourself. People tend to isolate themselves, and then they're left with their negative and depressed thoughts after they've been injured.
That would be a real tough one, and thank goodness there are people like you that have phenomenal workshops and your books, and of course, you have patients that you see. Dr. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today. We so appreciate being here and sharing your wisdom.
Marianne, thanks so much for having me.
And where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
So my website is www.janisaspring.com. It's JANISA Spring, SPRING.com. And I also, on the website of my books, After the Affair, Healing the Pain and Rebuilding Trust When a Partner Has Been Unfaithful. And the second book is How Can I Forgive You? The Courage to Forgive, the Freedom Not to. And the third book is on caregiving called Life with Pop, Lessons on Caring for an Aging Parent. It's interesting, often affairs happen when one person is caring for an aging parent or a relative, and the other person is feeling neglected. So in a sense, they all three are related.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. I never knew that's a common thing that happens.
Dr. Janis, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. We are at the end of our time. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.
you.